You don't just spend money to spend it. I mean, and then he blamed my sisters because of their hairdryer use. Air conditioners, about 80% of it, but he was like, it's those hair dryers you girls use. So
there you go.
So it was that kind of mindset.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Doodads podcast. I believe we are recording this time. We're on episode 23, which we just established is the Michael Jordan episode, which means you're in for a special treat. We all have the flu. This is our flu game episode. We are on the same side of the table tonight because we have a special guest, so we'll introduce here in a second. But if you're still here with us 23 episodes later, we greatly appreciate you, your efforts, your patience, dealing with us as we take our dad journey. Hit the buttons, like and subscribe. Find us on all social media platforms. I don't think I missed anything. Carl, how are you doing? Welcome back.
I'm gonna be doing better than Steven will be doing.
Oh yeah.
It's his birthday tomorrow.
Birthday, Steven.
If you make it.
If
Happy
you make
birthday.
it, we may have other plans for you, but Steven will be 33 ripe years.
I think that could be used like in a court of law.
Oh,
Like
shit.
this, right? Yeah.
Let the record show. We're not gonna get you, buddy. It'll be all right. Anyway.
Yeah, man, we got a guest. Make fun of him and call him the Prez, but no, a buddy of mine, Flynn, who I've known probably for about 20 years now, and Flynn, owner and president of a media company, long history here in Baton Rouge, and actually has some pretty cool family stuff. Like I want to hear about the Wagon at some point.
Okay.
A lot of cool history there. But through some mutual friends, I just was sitting there a couple weeks ago, and we were in the same room, and I looked at it, I was like, why have we not had Flynn on? We need to have Flynn on. And I said, Flynn, would you want to? And he graciously showing up tonight. So I want to say thanks for showing up, Mr. Flynn Foster.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I have been watching your show recently on YouTube, and I've been doing what you said, like, subscribe, all those, all those good things. Yeah, I know. More views, more clicks. Let's make it go viral.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
Let's do it.
I guess so. So you're president of.
I'm president of Guarantee Corporation and Guarantee Media. Guarantee Corporation is a holding company, without getting boring about all that, and it has.
I want holding companies.
Yeah.
So don't bore me. I mean, I'm telling me about it.
Companies underneath it. We started in 1926 by my grandfather as Guarantee Income Life Insurance Company, and we been in Baton Rouge for 98 years. We are planning our 100th birthday party if I don't screw it up, and. Sold our insurance company 8 years ago. We've been in broadcasting since the 1960s. Quite obviously, I had nothing to do with any of that. My father took over for my grandfather when he passed away, and then I had an opportunity to buy Channel 9 in 1964. And the guy that ran the station, they rented space from us. He came into my dad's office and said, hey, the TV station's for sale. I think you ought to buy it. It's a friend of my dad's, the general manager, Mr. Tommy Gibbons. And he said, my dad said, Tommy, we don't know anything about running TV station. Mr. Gibbons says, that's all right. He's the one who put it on the air in the 1940s. And he said, I'll run it for you. I want to keep it locally owned. And I think they're going to sell it to somebody out of New Orleans for this price. You need to match it. And I need your answer by tomorrow. And my dad.
No pressure.
Yeah, none whatsoever. So in 24 hours, we made a decision. My dad made the decision to go into the broadcasting industry.
This is Gordy Rush, and I know that successful business owners understand the potency of radio and digital marketing, each formidable in their own right. But combining them creates exponential impact. Introducing Guarantee Media Digital, bringing optimal brand messaging to businesses. Guarantee Media Digital guarantees measurable results. Uniting radio and digital will elevate your journey towards success. Secure your free digital audit now at guaranteemedia.com.
We owned Channel 9 until 1988 when Aflac, the duck, came along and purchased it. They owned stations across the South. And we got farther into radio at that point. We owned some stations in Ohio, California, Houma, Hammond, Slidell, Thibodaux, different places. We've maintained the broadcasting stuff, and now we do a lot of stuff like y'all do here. This is a really cool setup. And so the modern media world's way different. There was silos, there was TV, radio, and print, and it's not that anymore. They're all one now. And so trying to keep up in this wild world that we live in, we've done tons of video and stuff added to our radio. We own a digital media company called GatorWorks. Any ad that gets served to you on your phone, they can do that for a client, So 87% of all advertising will be digital by the year 2030.
I can believe it.
Makes sense.
So we've gone farther and farther into that, keeping our core, though, which is serving Baton Rouge with our local radio stations. So,
and y'all do, y'all are, God, the umbrellas. You have an ESPN affiliate like that you do 104.9, 104.5.
Correct.
ESPN radio, that runs all day. You also have music, which 98.1?
98 and 100.7, the Tiger. Yeah. And we have
Still country?
Yeah.
100.7?
If you can call that country.
Good point.
And in Talk 107.3, local talk. Plus we have Dave Ramsey and some other shows on there.
Man, that's just and so if Mr. Foster had said, you know what, Mr. Gibbons, I've molded over, not going to do it.
Yeah.
Man, it'd be, I guess, a completely different conversation today.
It would. We'd have missed out on a lot of fun, a lot of chance to serve Baton Rouge and do things locally and everything. And that's the key to local media today. Cannot compete with Facebook and all the big guys. But they're not going to show up here and go to a walk or go help raise money for Dreams Come True or
Absolutely.
something like that.
Yeah.
So that's where we can do it.
Yeah, and I guess what our whole content, the whole thing that we're about, right? Is as dads, we realize that this is there's a dialogue that maybe hasn't taken place for a long time or needs to take place, or maybe the narrative needs to shift as far as growing up, particularly in the South as a dude, when you have kids, there's this whole shift in your consciousness and how you look at the world. But sometimes you bring along baggage, and it doesn't matter, from Wall Street to Main Street, but whatever your walk of life is, I can only imagine, if I was growing up in your house, dude, my dad had a PhD. All right. So my entire life was always feeling man, I'm not smart enough. I haven't gotten good enough grade. I couldn't imagine what it was like growing up in your household and those kind of shoes, because I don't know if it was just inherently understood or expected, but I'm assuming there was this idea that you would, as time passed, kind of take more responsibility, and that's
the key. Take responsibility. My dad dropped out of LSU, did not finish. He was a veteran of World War II, which kind of interrupted his life for 4 or 5 years, and served in the Pacific. And so obviously always real proud of that.
Right.
And he got back and went to LSU. And after 3 years, by that time he was about 25 years old. It's I got to get to work. And so he quit with a year to go. My dad was very, he tried not to bring it home a lot. My dad was very stoic, perhaps the war does that to you. I would think so, not having done that. I wouldn't understand it. But it was also just his personality. I'm going to take it all in. I'm going to be very quiet. I'm going to be reserved, and I'll make a judgment. I, on the other hand, I had 3 sisters. There was 4 of us, and we were running around the house like, wild Indians. And, and bottle rocket wars in the 70s, in the backyard and all that kind of stuff, things you get in trouble with today. Oh, it was so much fun.
Good old days.
Oh, the good old days.
didn't have no phone. Didn't have no tablet.
I was thinking about this on the way over here. I grew up on Sherwood Forest Boulevard, and so we lived a couple blocks from Florida Boulevard, and there was a K&B on the corner, drugstore. You know, my mom let me walk down there when I was 5 years.
You know what a K&B is?
I'm familiar. I think I remember them having some in New Orleans.
Yes, that's where they were from.
Okay, so I do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
just make-
familiar.
Look, sometimes you're going to say certain things, and
Yeah.
sometimes you're
I
going
will
to
date, I will
you're gonna
date
have to-
myself. If y'all want to talk World War II history or anything up to about the 70s or 80s, I'm good. If y'all start talking about modern stars,
He's
and
pretty accurate
everything.
though, because I believe you were there for most of that, weren't you?
You were born in the 70s,
80,
80.
1980, but
Borderline
You're a
borderline
you're a
70s.
millennial? I know
no,
you are.
I'm right on the very.
You're
I'm,
right
a,
on the
I'm a
edge.
Gen Xer.
Gen X.
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, me too. But my mom let me walk to the K&B by myself.
Oh yeah,
At 5 years old. Yeah. And she said, I could see you out the kitchen window and right at the very end when you got there, you know. I
we're at
couldn't
Country
see any-
Corner, right
Yeah.
on the corner of Perkins and 100 Oaks, and that was
Yeah,
like
it's
you know
still
you
there.
you go walk and you know Mrs. Atwell would meet me with a little potato log or a pizza pie, but it was like go down there, go get some milk, you know it's
Great. Oh, yeah. Go down there. I bought candy cigarettes, Hershey bars, wrestling magazines, comic books, you know, and then perused the toy aisle and knew $3 for a cap gun was out of the question. Yeah.
It's crazy. Now I think about that now, and I'm like, there's nowhere that I would let my 4-year-old walk by herself.
So, and I think though that's also like shifting consciousness, also
Yeah.
what's available, media, things like that. That's the other thing. Like you don't see stuff on TV all the time, and we've talked about this. Like I was walking out the door, and what was Courtney watching? Some First 48 and some child,
Right, right.
And I'm just
Watch any of that.
no.
No.
Going to bed, she'll say, well, "Did you? Oh, look at what I'm reading." I'm like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah, I don't want to see any of that.
So I'll tell you how the media world's changed. The movie Apollo 13 came out, and my dad and I were at this conference, and we saw Jim Lovell speak. I had never heard of Apollo 13. You know, it was not something we talked about. You know, Apollo 11, you know, landing on the moon, all that kind of stuff. My dad talked to my mom and said, "I don't remember that." And I go, "Huh?"
That's
and once I
wild.
started studying, he goes, "Yeah, I don't remember that." And I started trying to figure out why he didn't remember it. And I was like, all right. So he was working. This was 1971 or 2, so he had 3 or 4 kids at the time. And if he missed Walter Cronkite on the CBS Evening News and only read the sports page for a week, he didn't get notices nonstop saying they've circled the moon, we're trying to get them home or anything. My mother was changing diapers, you know, and feeding kids and all that kind of stuff. That whole incident of that Apollo 13 was about a week long. And if they were busy that week, they missed it. They didn't catch the news. And today, nothing would happen that you would miss. We didn't miss anything from this weekend, you know, or you know anything like that. You got 5,000 notices and all that.
Right.
My dad missed Apollo 13. Said I don't remember it at all.
Man.
Yeah, and my dad's about 20 years older than you, and so like it's a lot of this. The movie The Christmas Story is like one of his favorite, and it's a kind of like a family tradition every Christmas, right? We watch it nonstop, and it's hilarious. But he talks about the old man in the movie, like he's like the old man. He's like, you have to understand that what, like in his eyes, like that's what a man was. You know, you worked, you came home, you dealt with your boiler all day, and you fought with some sort of circuit thing, and you read, you know, about what was it like four-eyed frog, whatever, who just got traded to the Chicago Bears or whatever. You know, it's like you didn't have. And there was no TV; it was radio at that time. And you know, running home to get Little Orphan Annie on the radios. You know, my dad was always like, "If you didn't catch something, you just missed it."
It was gone.
That is really interesting and something I guess I didn't really ever thought about. But I guess at that point, with media being the way that it was, you chose what you consumed for the most part. Or like you said, if you were busy, you just didn't get it. Whereas I'm thinking about now, and it's like there's information that I consume that I never even asked to get put through my system, my algorithm, stuff that I could care less about, or stuff that freaks me out, or stuff that, you know, like I think
but there's like a subconscious, like maybe a subconscious video watching that you did that you don't even remember doing, and it
heard me talk. It heard me dreaming about it.
But that's what scares me about with kids.
She concerns me sometimes. Alexa, how old's Pat Sajak, or something like that, 'cause
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out when he retired. But it's like every once in a while she'll give you an answer and you hadn't said a word.
Right.
It's a little, yeah.
Oh, I believe Big Brother's. I'm not confused.
So what's interesting is my grandfather, was born in 1879. If he was alive today, he'd be 145 years old. So he was 40-something when my dad was born. My dad was 40-something when he had all of us. And so just 2 generations back, I'm almost to the Civil War, I mean, back then people were having kids at 18 and 20 and all this. They're having them in their 40s. And so I obviously never met my grandfather, but I mean, he grew up, cotton farm, north central Louisiana, and actually ran away from home to go to school because his dad had said, "You've had enough. We need you on the farm." And he said, "I'm leaving." And he went to Mount Lebanon State College somewhere north of Ruston, which doesn't exist anymore. He got a sort of bookkeeping degree or something.
Where was he from?
He was from Pollock, Louisiana, which is still 200 people. It's been about 200 people forever. It's north of Pineville, about 20 minutes.
Yeah, my mom and my dad, my grandfather, he was from Winfield.
Oh, yeah. My best friend's from Winfield. I met him in college. And that's small world.
Bro,
Would probably know my buddy. His mom's 90 years old, still living there.
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather's house was at 514 Center Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm going to mention that to my bud when I leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, small world.
Oh,
so
yeah.
anyway, things have changed, man, and I guess they'll keep changing. I would assume, I don't know. I mean, it's so crazy. We think, well, it can't get any wilder than this. But what do you think people were thinking about before the automobile?
Well, and I mentioned because I've probably been listening to Hanny for as long as I can remember. Like, I mean, from when I was driving going to high school, like I would, anytime I could catch him, even Jordy way back in the day, like I would, find these radio stations that had some sort of sports content. Because personally, for me, was like outside of music, like sometimes I just don't want to listen to music. But if I want to hear like just some talking, sports is like the only thing I can listen to where there's not a lot of arguing.
Right.
We don't have to. It's not political. It's not. We don't have to get. It's either you agree with their take on the team or you don't, but it's pretty streamlined, and it's crazy because I think back to like the different incarnations of like Hanny and Ott in some way, shape, or form to now like you've got the Mercedes-Benz studio and like this YouTube channel for like, some of those guys and yeah, media has definitely grown, but I guess I think about like when you see your kids, what do you see like, okay, so obviously this is what I will be leaving to them as well? Or do you also maybe because of your experience go, well, maybe I want to kind of not make them feel so obligated?
Right.
And
my dad did a great job of just not handing over stuff,
Sure.
And very appreciative of that. I probably didn't have the best attitude about that when I was younger, without all the details being spilled on this podcast. So at some point in my life, my dad said, "You need to go work somewhere else and make sure you can make it on your own." And so I did. And I went to work in the mortgage business for Resource One Mortgage, which used to be across the street here on Glenstone. So when you said Glenstone.
He was saying that. He's like, oh, yeah. Used to work.
I know exactly where Glenstone is. Yeah. And so, and I did mortgages and I also worked for GMFS, great group of guys. My bosses there were Jeff Weston, Tom DeArmond, and T Brown. And it was 100% commission. You didn't close a loan, you didn't eat, So I did that for about 12 years. And then, so eventually, and I had worked for the insurance company. I'd worked in radio and all that kind of stuff. My dad got old and his succession plan was, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm going to live forever. And he did almost. He lived to 94.
Your dad and my dad should have gone bowling.
Yeah. Jeez. That's funny. My dad would have wanted to go hunting. And so my kids, so our oldest son's 26, and he's been in plants the last year and a half in South Louisiana and South Texas. And we needed a facilities manager at our office. We've got 6 buildings, 2 downtown, and a few others spread around. And he's actually made for that. He knows how to fix stuff. I don't. And he knows which way the wrench goes and how to do those things. And so it feels really good that he's in a spot, that is where he can grow and everything. Our youngest son graduated from LSU last year, has been working for LSU Sports Properties and everything. And I've told him, I'm not hiring you. I'm not hiring you right now, And you may go find something in the sports world that there's a lot of bigger things than us in Baton Rouge in the sports world. And I don't want to get in that in the way of that. Maybe someday he'll come, but it's never, here it is, boys, go get them.
Absolutely.
I just and I've actually seen that. I think it's incredibly. I just think it's insane, self-destructive. I had a father who we had a meeting at our house one time because our electricity bill was too high. It was that philosophy of you don't just spend money to spend it. And then he blamed my sisters because of their hairdryer use. Air conditioners, about 80% of it, but he was like, it's those hair dryers you girls use.
We use that on Aubrey here soon, dude.
So, there you go.
So it was that kind of mindset, It was never, we've made it and everything relative to the insurance world we lived in and the media world we did and do live in. We're actually small, We're in Baton Rouge. We're not also have a station in New York and Chicago or something.
Right.
And so you were always dealing with people way bigger than us, if you own a convenience store in Baton Rouge, you may just only know the other convenience stores. But like we always were, my dad was always knew people who were like super big and owned 20 TV stations or 100 radio stations or whatever. And Baton Rouge, 80th market in America, So we do fine, we do good and all that kind of stuff. But, we got to go to work every day and work hard. And that was his philosophy. Get up, go to work. How do you get rich, Dad? He said, work hard and save your money. And I went, next, that one's not going to work. Let me talk to somebody else.
Right.
But that was how he did it.
You said something that stood out to me as far as your oldest son, and that I think is really cool. Something that I think is good to remember for me. I have a daughter who just turned 4 last week, and then I've got a son coming in October. So I'm soaking up as much son stuff as I can. But with the oldest working in the plants, and now there's a position within your company that he can do what he's good at and fulfill a role that's not, hey, this is what you're going to do because it's it's the family business or what. I don't care if you don't have any interest in media. I don't care if you don't have any interest, because I feel like that could be a common theme or a common tendency is you have a family business, and it's like, your child or your son or daughter, whoever, you force your kid in a way to work for the family business because that's what you do, and that kid wants absolutely nothing to do with whatever it is, and then he's trapped or she's trapped for however many years and feel obligated.
How am I going to live up to it?
Right, exactly, exactly.
And I had that with my dad. He never imposed that upon me, but I was like, this guy's like always off, meeting people, and he was fortunate enough to be friends with a few Hollywood stars of the 60s and 70s and stuff and all that kind of stuff, and it was like, I can't match this. And he never once said you got to do,
But did you feel like you had to?
Oh God, yes.
That's and that's always the thing I've always said is that like my dad could say, I don't care what you do, you could be a ditch digger, just be the best ditch digger you could be. And I automatically heard, this mama thinks I'm gonna be a ditch digger. Like that's all he thinks I'm, but it always felt like there was this insurmountable thing that I had to do or become, and that was my stuff. That was all on me, and it took a lot of years of self examination and talking with people and getting other people's perspective, and also I also come from the Mark Twain flight, at 18, my father knew nothing. By the time I was 25, I was amazed at how much he had learned. It's like the older I get, I realize, maybe you might know a thing or two. But I know that's always been my thing with my kids is that I just don't want to, not to say that my dad was a bad dad. He was great for who he was and what he was. But there's a lot of stuff there that definitely I'm like, all right, we don't want to bring that into this relationship. We want to maybe learn from that,
Yeah. Well, my dad of course, I told you his dad, 1879. there wasn't a lot of, let's talk about your feelings and
Yeah.
hug and all this kind of stuff. It's good, my grandfather's first job was picking cotton at 8 years old. It's like
Life expectancy is 55. We got to get to work.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there was not a lot of that. My mother filled that role nicely, still does. Turned 87 last week or so, and she was she's the daughter of a Baptist preacher, and all that kind of stuff, and she's the one who kept us together. I was thinking about this. I don't think my dad ever helped us once with homework. And I'm not kidding, not one time. And he was working. When he got home, he had dealt with whatever crazy thing all day long, sat down, fixed himself a little drink, caught the news maybe, read whatever in the paper he missed, that type of deal. And Mom was going from room to room to room. Did you do your math? Did you? How's your science project coming? All that kind of stuff. And so more traditional roles from back then, and which worked out great. My mom, was always there. She did graduate from LSU, from Louisiana College, got an English degree, taught before she met my dad, and all that. And she helped us write papers and all those other things, did what moms in the 70s were doing,
Well, it's crazy you talk about also your grandfather, because my dad, he was born in 41, and, he was 39 when I was born. I was 39 when Ben was born. And it could possibly Ben grow up in the 21st century, and by the time he's say 40, it'll be 2060.
Oh.
And Ben, my grandfather was in World War II. Was born during World War II. That's wild.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's my kids had a great, and my dad died in 2018, so my kids were 18, 19 years old, so they obviously got to know him well. Got to hunt with him and everything, and they have followed in my sort of love for history, and so they'll tell me I watched an episode of Band of Brothers last night or whatever. So, and I look back, my dad, all his friends were World War II veterans, and I know one shot down over Belgium. I heard his stories of being in the Belgium underground.
Oh, wow.
And other ones, 3 childhood friends died on the USS Arizona from Pollock, Louisiana. So. I always heard those stories, and met his friends. One was at Iwo Jima, a guy named Byron Collins, met him and everything. And I look back and I go, oh, I got goosebumps right now. It's like, holy cow.
But that was that era of men.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that's that. And that's, I think, for me and my dad, which was always maybe the misconception and big hurdle in our relationship, because my dad's dad died during World War II.
Oh, wow.
And so he was 4 years old. His dad's, and so I think he had, and of course he had his mom, good Catholic widow who, just laid the guilt on left and right. You have no idea about your father, and your father was, so here was this saintly individual that my dad really never knew, but it was, and my dad got a PhD in archaeology. So history was a big thing growing up, but yeah, man, there's this idea of what a man. And dude, it is man, you think I can watch Band of Brothers or whatever, but I can just get on the History Channel and watch an episode of anything from World War II, and I go, man, that's hard to live up to.
Yeah.
Those guys were hard. And my dad's heroes were people like Joe DiMaggio and people like Ted Wood. They went and fought in the war, came back, still hit home runs, and
That's always loved that. Yeah, Ted Williams was gone for 4 years. His first year back, he hit 360 or whatever.
Yeah,
My dad saw Babe Ruth hit a home run, and you mentioned some off the cuff nickname of some guy. I'm pretty sure he hit it off of Sam Sad Jones in 1933 in Chicago. My dad went up there for the World's Fair. Was 8 or 9 years old. And his family, they took the train up, him and his 2 sisters and his parents. And he said, I saw Babe Ruth hit a home run. And
that's one of those dad stories that you don't ever let anybody not know that you got to see.
My dad saw the Yankees play at the Polo Grounds.
Oh, wow.
He also
Very
saw
cool.
the New York Giants and saw Willie Mays play.
I got to see the year Barry Bonds broke the home run record. I got to see him hit 752 and 753 in the same game against the
What are you
Cubs
talking about?
at Wrigley.
Yeah, he didn't.
What record?
He didn't break that record. I've wiped it out. No. I've wiped it out. Oh, has this been a discussion in the previous?
No, it's never come up actually.
He hit him. There's no doubt he hit him. There's video evidence of all of them.
His head grew after he was 40 years old. Like, come on, man.
Need to go down this rabbit hole.
You see, like him and Bobby Bonilla's rookie year in the Pirates, and you go, really?
That's when baseball was fun, though.
Well, the Sosa McGuire Bonds thing was
Have
a
you
ball.
seen my
The year, look.
my legalized steroids T-shirt with the pictures of Bonds and,
And look,
Sosa and McGuire?
No, it just. I think what hurts me, and we're going way off here, but that's the whole point. But like, my big problem here is that like you take somebody like Barry Bonds, who was born to play baseball,
Hall of Famer,
born to play baseball, and what? Did you have to do all the stuff you did that you deny doing that we all know you did do? Like, Ken Griffey, the sweetest swing ever, and guess what he never did? Steroids, and we know he
might have had a longer career if he did, though.
Yeah. Well, but he...
I would never tarnish that man.
But you also look at him. He never gained a pound in the major leagues.
Exactly.
It was always the same.
Speaking of Hanny, I will never forget the episode after the Hall of Fame came out, and on the first ballot, Ken Griffey, and he was one vote shy of unanimous. And I remember Hanny.
Did he go off on him?
I remember Hanny, like he just like, what numbskull would just of all people? Because the very next year was Sandman, was Mo Rivera, and he got unanimous, and they're like.
That's crazy.
Ken Griffey, of all people, you know?
Yeah, very good. So let me ask y'all a question.
I think
in y'all's modern world with raising kids, mine are 26 and 24.
Just the two boys? I meant to ask you that.
Yeah, two boys, yeah. And what are y'all's concerns? What are y'all trying to do? I mean, is it just endless? It feels endless today. I don't know. Maybe it always has felt that way of concerns, and what do you want them to learn?
So... I guess I'll briefly answer first. I think mine are, I have my like wild and outlandish fears and concerns, especially with a girl. And I don't think that they're all wild and outlandish. I think some of them are pretty reasonable as the dad of a girl. Mine are more of, I mean, not bringing it up, but the events that occurred over the weekend. Mine are more of the stability of the world that she's going to be a young adult and raise her kids in. Because I'm slowly starting to realize that as much, and I will continue to do my best to protect her as best as I can. But I guess there's always been outside factors that you can't protect and hide your kids from, but I just feel like those things and those influences are just becoming more and more and more prominent. The ability to be influenced by anyone and anything at any time outside of your immediate family and your parents and the principles that your family is trying to instill in you, that's one of my biggest concerns. And it's like, I think we do our best to, at 4, as best as you can, start instilling some of these values in her, but it's like, at what point? We've talked about it in the past, just at what point does that, I guess you can only hope that it's instilled deep enough to where when the outside influence, exactly.
And we've talked about it at depth, but I think TV was going to rot your brain, and video games were going to rot ours, and so on, and so something we mentioned Gary Vee prior to the show, but he always says like technology's not going to stop. Like no matter what don't. And I always think about in Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker, and it's all because I was, and I've said it before, a moment in history that was very, very life altering and perception altering, maybe even more than 9/11. Because you know what happened with 9/11 for me was this altering moment in our nation's history, this thing that just definitely like changed and shit. But you know what? It's been so long now that I forgot what it was like to go through an airport without TSA. Mm-hmm. So like that, it's now I've just shifted. I was the graduating class at Columbine. That happened my senior year. And it was one of those things where as a high school senior, you go, I have plotted the murder of a number of teachers that I've had. My vice principal was one. I was like, if I ever catch him in a dark alley, never in a million years did I really ever. And Chris Rock said, they said it was the music they listened to, the trench coat mafia. You know, it was the video games they played. Oh, the shooter games. Whatever happened to crazy? And what I've had to understand is that there are going to be people, regardless of what happened, and we can talk about it, you know, briefly. But you know, the assassination attempt on former President Trump, like, it's not about what side of the aisle you stand on. Somebody to be that brash and that brazen to say, this is what I'm going to do. I happen to reserve the right to say, I think they're just crazy.
Yeah.
No matter what side of the aisle they stand on or what their personal beliefs are. Like, I can not like you, but to go out to try to kill you, you know? And so, like, school shooters, things like that kind of stuff, I've just accepted that those people are out there, and how do I protect my kids, be aware of their surroundings, things like that. As far as media goes, as far as technology, again, TV was going to rot your brain. Video games were going to rot ours. Like, it's never going to stop.
Make us go blind if we were
Oh, man.
I used that on mine the other day.
But, like, that's the thing. Like, I've just... What you said, you know, especially with Aubrey, she's 15, and it doesn't help that she's good looking, you know, like if she was an ugly child, I'd be like, well, might be all right. But, you know, seriously,
to leave.
Right. But the thing is how have I done as a parent to instill self-confidence, self-reliance, good judgment, self-awareness, so that whatever comes at them, they're prepared.
Same thing, although my kids are obviously a good bit older than y'all. But it was the same thoughts, you know. We weren't talking social media or anything like that then. It was like, can't specifically say what I thought the dangers were, but I can say, well, let's raise them right. Let's be a good father and a good mother. Never a question of my wife being a good mother. You know, there was a chance I could have gone rogue, you know, and so. And you know, and that's what we've tried to do. You know, if you met my sons today, they'd walk up to you, they'd look you in the eye, and they'd shake your hand and say, "I'm Luke Foster. I'm Landon Foster. 100% guarantee." I saw them do it today at a friend's mother's funeral. You know, walked right up and they'd right in the eye, and I said, "Well, we worked on a handshake when they were 4 years old. Yeah, we're not. You know, we're going to. You know." And it's not being a macho man or grabbing it tight. It's like just being respectful. And it's, yes, sir. It is still yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. We're not going away from that. You know, I freak out when I go up north and an 8-year-old kid looks at me and goes, "Yeah," and I go, "Oh, remember where you are?
Right,
you're in South Dakota or whatever."
Yeah,
you know, freak me out. You know, and it's not about being subservient or anything. It's just being respectful. You know, just be respectful. And they've done it. They're a lot of fun. They were at our house this evening, and the new NCAA is out, and they were playing it. And one of them plays the Madden a lot, and one of them plays Fortnite, whatever that is. I don't know what it is. I've heard about it. So the Madden player was beating the Fortnite player, and the Fortnite player was LSU. Tennessee was killing us. They were, you know, and but they had done rock paper scissors to see who got to be LSU. And so when LSU's losing, they're in Tiger Stadium, and I'm yelling like it's a real game. This defense is not stopping them. I can't believe we can't. You know, it was great. So
you've got to press him more.
Yeah, and they're just sitting there laughing because I'm literally saying things I would say during a football game.
Right.
Because I'm just ripping. You know, they still haven't changed anything. They can't stop the pass. You know, it was great. And we were just up there laughing. My wife was downstairs. They said. The boys said it looks like you're enjoying the game. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's you know, it's interesting, and I feel like for me, at least here recently, with my first kid being a girl, which I 100% am convinced that was by design at this point, that I needed that to soften me up a little bit, make me a little bit more compassionate and patient, and you know, and I think if I'd have had a son first, I would have learned a lot harder lessons in a lot harder ways than I have over the last couple of years. But I feel the same way. Like I it's hard because I find I want to, both son and daughter, but especially son, I want to raise him and teach him respect and manners and you know, what it means to be a man, but that it's okay to feel some stuff. But, you know, like some happy balance, which is why I just am constantly working on myself to try to be able to experience that, to still be the leader of my family, to still feel like I'm somebody that my wife can trust to make decisions, somebody that my wife can come to and not feel scared of or intimidated by, but also continue to make sure I deal with the pent-up stuff that I have that comes out in ways that I didn't know it was going to come out just over the year, you know, and then I don't know, it's one of those things.
Suggestion to you, when you get an opportunity, go, if you haven't done this, go look at Enneagram. I don't know if you know what Enneagram is. If you know your number.
I'm a 6.
You're a 6. All right. I'm a 2. I'm a helper. You are
Skeptic.
Yeah. You walk into a room and you look for where the exit signs are.
I do.
Yeah, I know. I've studied it thoroughly.
I do.
And now you can be a phobic or a counterphobic Enneagram 6. A phobic is like really worried anything can go wrong, and it will, and you talk yourself into scary stories. Counterphobic 6 is, that's Mount Everest. I might die if I climb it. Let's give it a shot anyway and see if I can overcome
I'm the
it.
first one.
Okay. Yeah. So it's all numbers are good. Yeah. No number shaming. But I encourage you, especially with a daughter that's 15, I encourage you to start looking it up. We've done a lot of this work at work with an Enneagram coach out of Dallas, Texas. She is writing a book about it. Her mother's written a couple of books about it. The Road Back to You, I think, is the book you might want to get. And it's fascinating because now I know my wife's number. She's a 9. She's a peacemaker, like at all cost peace. And I'm always like, you're taking their side. She goes, no, just going to see both, you know. And so everybody at work has done it, you know. Most people have embraced it. Everybody doesn't always embrace that kind of stuff. And it's a language that we use in the office. It's fascinating. Oh, he's a 7. That's kind of the guy that's got the big ideas, and he just will try anything that comes along. Like, whoa, if there's money involved in that, we need somebody else with another number to think that through a little bit, you know. And it's
That is that's kind of. I looked at him because Ken is the one that put me onto it, and I took the test and got my number, and that, you know, kind of read a brief description and didn't really dig or dive really deep into it, but I may do that now that you brought some of that stuff up.
So we've had people at work go, oh my God, I finally understand my spouse. I finally understand it. I finally understand my kid. You know, it has helped me with, like, our CFO. He's a 1, which is the perfectionist, but he's got the inner critic that tells him everything he does is actually not any good. And he's, like, you know, extremely intelligent, you know, and so you can't let maybe him come up with the big ideas, you know. He's the one who needs to beat those up, you know. And so, but we all understand now where each person's coming from by knowing that number. It is fascinating. We've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years now, and my brother-in-law runs a turnaround shutdown company. A bunch of guys who work in the plants and everything. They've got all their guys doing it, you know, and they're talking about it and everything. It's fascinating.
That's funny that you say that, because I was just sitting here thinking about the World War II dads. Could you imagine these guys sitting around getting their numbers? Yeah, you know what? Old Jimmy over there, he's a 4. You got to be real careful around him. You got to watch your stuff.
You know, like right after that is when, like, L. Ron Hubbard did Dianetics and stuff and started the what? You don't know about, like, the Scientology?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is Tom Cruise your next guest?
Oh,
Could be.
God.
To you, buddy.
Right.
Did I ever tell you about Frank's experience with Scientology? It's a mutual friend, Frank, a mutual friend of ours.
Frankie Baby.
Oh,
Frankie Baby.
Francis. So we were in the midst of, we're part of a little study group that, like, you know, and we meet weekly, and all of a sudden we were unhoused. We had to go find new facilities. So we all kind of got together and said, all right, you know, Flynn, you go out and check South Baton Rouge. Brandon, you go check North Baton Rouge. Carl, I'll take East Baton. So Frank went and found some, and he came back and he said, I went to the Scientology.
Oh my gosh.
And Frank was like, I mean, they wouldn't stop talking. I was like, Frank, they almost took you.
They almost got you.
Dude, stay away.
Yeah.
Poor Frank would
Did you
be
tell
the
him your
one.
deepest, darkest secrets? Because you're not getting out.
I was like, I think they're a little weird. I was like, you think, Frank?
That's.
Oh, Frank, I love him. What a character, Frankie Baby.
But, you know, like, even that, I guess that's the and we talk about this in depth too, and it's really a great dialogue between the two of us. I know, because we do have vast differences in our childhood. We also have vast differences in a lot of the things we see in the world, but we also have some commonalities. But definitely, like, I look at faith and all that, and how what you present in the household. It is. There were a lot of times where whatever I believed or tried or thought, a lot of times my dad was so busy telling me the history about it, or why believing that would be weird or wrong, or what, rather than just letting me do it and figure it out for myself, which turned me, unfortunately, into a pretty negative cynic in a lot of ways. Because now, anytime somebody the first thing you started telling me about, the first thing I'm doing, I'm like, let me look this up. Let me see. It's probably
G-R-A-M.
It's probably no good, and it's
gypsy
Wonderful,
right? But that's
we've had people like that, and they've actually listened, because we bring this lady in quarterly. It's been a lot of money to have her there, and they've like one lady I thought would never, just didn't think she would be open to it. She said after the first deal, she called her mom and she goes, "Mom, I completely understand my childhood now." She goes, "I completely understand the frustrations I had and everything else, So anyway, that's a plug for Enneagram. So
this episode was brought to you by
Enneagram. So anyway, it's fun stuff. I love learning. That's a fascinating thing. I love what y'all are doing, because this is just a different experience. I mean, in the media business, I'm not in front of a camera or on a mic. It's fast. I would love to go back to my teachers in school and go, "Do you know that I now read? I read, and I love to learn new stuff. It's part of one of the things that is good about modern social media, especially like YouTube. I want to learn how to fix my pool pump. Well, there's 9 million videos on that, or whatever. I actually had this pump thing outside the house, and I YouTubed it, and I was like, "Oh, I need to order this," and I did it, and I watched the video 12 times. It was only 5 minutes, because my mind is not mechanical, and I fixed it. You want to talk about satisfaction?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. I did it.
My dad had a meltdown.
Recent.
He and my mom were together for 60 years. My mom's been gone 4 years. And it just, when there's a problem, she typically was his right arm. And so, we go to lunch now and try to keep in touch and all that, and whatever. And he was like, I would really appreciate it if you'd come by the house afterwards. My Roku's not working.
No.
And it was, it was DEFCON 4. Yeah. My dad, he's also, I don't know if you heard the media, if you heard about this damn situation with DirecTV and NBC. I can't get NBC now, and don't you have the Peacock? And I was like, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, Dad, we have the power. And I found a video, and he was like, I was like, yeah, I said, "Dad, if you want to learn how to churn butter, I promise you there's somebody that will show you how to churn butter."
I might watch that tonight.
That's pretty wild.
Now, if you have a battle, I'm going to go into a little rabbit hole between NBC and DirecTV. It's called must carry and retransmission consent. I happen to serve on the National Association of Broadcasters Board of Directors. And so anyway, they have to negotiate, to carry it on their deal. And that's what always happens when all of a sudden you wake up and Fox is not on your local cable or on YouTube or something. Well, they're negotiating how much they're going to pay, the local affiliates,
Well, funny, my dad was like, I didn't know you went and got Peacock. I was like, funny, Dad, Peacock and NBC just isn't that important to me between March and August. But somewhere between late August, early September, and February, I really need NBC. And he was like, "Why?" I was like, "Football, Dad. I need to have that channel." So I got the Peacock
Here's
channel.
what I want us to do. I want us to do this podcast in 20 years. I'll be 76. Oh. Because I'm going to tell you something that's happened to me. I watch less and less sports all the time. And I watched as much as y'all did, through the years and everything. And I'll give you an example. My wife thinks I've just totally weirded out. So LSU women were playing Iowa, and was at the Final Eight this year, when they lost. And I kind of figured they'd lose because Caitlin Clark was playing so well, and LSU's team the previous year was so awesome. And so I went and read a book. And and she's like, she walked in at one point and go, "Who is my husband now?" And she goes, "You're not watching the game?" And I go, "Well, I'm catching it on the phone. I'm updating, And we're behind most. It seems like we're behind most of that game because Caitlin Clark's bombing, 40-foot 3-pointers. And we were down by 8. She goes, "Well, do you want to know what's going on?" And she goes, "We're down by 8." And I said, "There's a couple minutes left." And I said, "I kind of figured that was going to happen." And she goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, I'm reading a book." And so it's interesting. It has taken. I mean, I have been to LSU football games since 1972. I have obviously our company's involved, and I want LSU to win.
Right.
I've my wife's lesson of they can't hear you like when you're yelling at the TV might have finally begun to sunk in. We've been married almost 30 years now, and so anyway, it's really an interesting kind of journey of not having it be quite as big a priority as it was before, and so I love football. I actually love like an Oklahoma State. I won't say Iowa because they don't have any.
Absolutely.
Give me one of those games where it's going to be 45-42, and it's not LSU, and I'm not living and dying with it. And and you're just praying for overtime, because then it may be 3 overtimes, and somebody will have to go for 2. And I love those games because the LSU game.
There's no investment.
Yeah,
it's just for entertainment.
I know, and it's so because it's so. I mean, it just kills you when they lose.
Well, I'm sorry. Do you think this is a curiosity of mine? Because I've kind of felt that same way about LSU sports in general. Growing up, family full of LSU graduates. Like my grandfather, my dad's dad before World War II, he got a scholarship to LSU to play football.
He might have played with my uncle.
Might have.
Yeah.
But like prior to 2003, well, I mean, we had baseball, but baseball kind of became just like, I was like, every other year we'll be in Omaha and we'll probably win. So, but especially with football and then basketball, I mean, we had a couple of Final Four runs there with Big
81,
Baby,
86, 90, or whatever, 2000,
06,
whatever, 06,
yeah. But like, you start winning football national championships every 4 years. Your women win a national championship. You win another baseball. Like, is there also like maybe just a little bit of like jet lag on me? Like I'm kind of the same way. I'm like,
well,
I get him.
I don't want to tailgate anymore. I'm past all that stuff. COVID, because I couldn't go. I started going to where my great-great-grandfather settled in North Louisiana. We still have some land up there. And I started going up there and was like, oh, I can make it without it, or whatever. And I just was like, I don't have to go to 7 home games, anymore. I can go to 3. And I'm going to 3 this year. UCLA because I've never seen them. Ole Miss because I'm in between hunting stuff. And Alabama because I went on a World War II trip to Europe last year and met a bunch of great people. And they're from Georgia and Boston, and they want to come to Tiger Stadium. And so I'm going to do that. And the rest of them, whether I'm there or not, I'm not going to have any influence on how good Nuss is as a quarterback, know. And so anyway, it's just interesting, I never expected it. And so I want him to win, though. Definitely.
That is interesting, though, now that I think. Because I've always been a sports fan and played, and, but I think I've talked about it before. I've always loved LSU because this is where I grew up and this is just what I was raised on. But I've never, like you and the Cubs, I don't have that with a particular team. Like I'm not a diehard fanatic for anyone. I just like watching Paul Skeens dominate. I liked watching the guys in the early 2000s just hit home runs. I loved watching, I guess I'm a fan of sport, period. And I think that, but I mean, I still get worked up over stupid play calls and, blown coverages and all that. But
one thing that's happened as I've gotten older is there's guys in the 70s and 80s. I hated them. I hated them,
Yeah.
I don't know anything. But I hate them because they're not on my team. And then I look back and I'll go, oh, Roger Staubach. He was in the Navy. He won the Heisman Trophy. He was a super nice guy. And he won
Tim Tebow.
Oh, yeah, what a great human being. And it's
that's my argument to everybody. I say, you want to know what? If Tim Tebow would have strapped on purple and gold, I would have loved him. I said, but you know what I hate about Tim Tebow? Is that when Aaron Hernandez was doing what he was doing. When, like when everybody was screwing up or getting a DUI or committing murder, doing whatever. Tim Tebow was like on a mission trip
I know.
in the
Feeding-
offseason.
I know, and you're
4.0,
like,
4.0 still. I'm like, can you just get a DUI? Can you get like busted for
Somebody put
drugs
some
or
cocaine
something?
in his pocket,
Because
please.
he was
Oh, my God.
he was so good at
Yeah.
college football for those couple of years. And then I was like, and he's look, but it's okay. He's at the Broncos. It's not like he's gonna. And he gets a walk-off touchdown
Yeah.
on the Steelers. And then he's like, I'm gonna go do baseball. It's always I'm like, well, this is cute. This is and what does he do first at bat? He hits a home run. I'm like, can you be bad at anything?
I know. But I love looking back on that stuff, and thinking, it's like I hated the Yankees, Reggie Jackson on the 70 whatever World Series when he hit 3 home runs, and it was like, and now I recognize greatness, you know. It's like Brady,
Yeah.
Tom Brady kept a lot of people from winning Super Bowls. It's kind of like Mahomes right now. May keep Burrow from winning one. Who knows? But you can look back and go, wow, that's excellence at its best. Rarely is there anything else in life that we get to see it more than sports. You know, I mean, we're not usually on TV the best science teacher in the world or whatever.
Right.
And so you get to see it there. And now I can kind of step back and go, wow, unbelievable. It's kind of neat.
That was definitely the reason why I went to because I used to have season tickets and I gave them up, and that season was the last year that Les was coach, full season.
Full season.
Because Courtney was like, do you really want to go to the A&M game? I said, win or lose, they're carrying him off the field. I said we want to say we were there, and she was like, oh, look at that, they carried him off the field, and I was sure as shit gonna go home and see F King and them say, all right, we're moving on. I was like, nope. But I had gotten rid of my season tickets, but in 2019 I went to as many home games because I was like, I don't know if we'll ever see this again.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever see this again. We're coming to a wrap, but one of the questions I also wanted to think about with, like, you talk about sports. Did you go to a lot of games with your kids?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Is that like maybe also another, like maybe it's kind of a transition where it's like we're not as doing it as
they
much?
still tailgate. I'm not into
Sure.
it, and so they still love being there early.
My mom was
the nap now.
My mom was big on, she was the big sports person. My dad wasn't as much, but we have gotten a lot. Well, her dad was a Razorback and all, that kind of stuff. Yeah, whatever. As my dad says, oh, your mother's side of the family. That's how much. Because my dad, roll on green wave. He was a Tulane.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, got his PhD.
I was raised to hate a lot of teams, and Tulane was one of them because they were actually good in the day.
Back exactly.
And so it was Tulane, Notre Dame, because the Catholic priest came down here and took 2 good running backs in the 40s or something, and from New Orleans, from the Catholic league schools, and my dad could name the 2 players till almost the day he died, and it was them. And of course, it was at Ole Miss and Alabama, Texas A&M. Like 6 or 7 cousins have been to Texas A&M, and so was kind of excited. Not that I was cheering for Tennessee, but I was kind of excited when A&M lost the College World Series. That was nice. But we did a lot of games together. And a lot of hunting and fishing, and so there's a bond, and that's what I did with that was how I connected with my dad when I was little. He was not bringing home, a lot of work, as I said earlier, and so he was working a lot, and so I was the only boy of the 4 kids. So he took me back then. You didn't take girls hunting. You'd do that, probably do it now, with no problem. It just wasn't what happened back in the day, and so that was my time with Dad. No matter how cold it was or anything. So I introduced my kids to hunting when they were 5 years old, and now they're like experts at it, and they love it, and they're eating up with it. And so we've had a ton of fun doing that. It's really been great.
That's pretty cool.
It's been good.
Has been.
Tell us about the wagon before we close.
Okay, so my great-great-grandfather leaves Mississippi in 1872, some sort of land grant in North Louisiana, where there are no oil wells. You kind of come somewhere else and got an oil well, but no, there's a bunch of pine trees. Anyway, I always say that jokingly. And so he loaded up. Yes, he loaded up the family. He was married 3 times, and I think the 2 wives died pretty young. I don't know if it was childbirth or what. And so he loaded up 10 or so kids in a I'm sure they mostly walked or had a mule or something. And so moved to where our property is in North Louisiana, close to Pollock, and set up shop. Set up. I guess built a house, and they built some old barns. And underneath one of those old barns was the wagon that they came across on. Came from Mississippi, and it's been under there forever. It was still used. I had a great uncle or somebody who still farmed the land into the 1950s or 60s or something. But it was sitting on the ground. The wheels were gone, but the bed was still there. And so I kept going, what can I do with that? I don't know how to, I'm no carpenter, cut my finger off, So anyway, found a guy up there. I said, I think I want to turn that into a dining room table. So we loaded it into the bed of his truck, me and this guy, Brother Ron Nation, who runs a church up there, and he's also the carpenter. He took it and kind of cut it down to size, not very big. So there weren't he had 10 kids at the time. They weren't all in that wagon. It was all their stuff. And it's now the dining room table in our house. Huh. And
you've got
that's cool.
4 generations of your family.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. So great grandfather, dad, me, now my boy's 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a couple episodes ago we were talking about keepsakes and memento, having things to pass down. That is difficult to.
Oh, there's a dresser that my mom would always say, this survived the flood of 1920s. Yeah, the flood of
Louisiana.
Interesting.
Neville and others sing. Yeah. Little fat
cool.
man coming down. I think they were talking about president of the time. So it's a great song. So anyway, that table's
cool.
awesome. It is. It's where we have dinner now and all that good stuff. And
that's awesome.
Brackets that used to hold the bow or the bow or whatever you call it. Original nails, original kind of square screws. Yeah, really. It's really cool. When the guy did it, I about lost my mind. The goosebumps, tearing up, all
that's
that kind
really
of stuff.
Cool.
Cool.
So yeah, fun stuff.
I need a wagon just so that my great grandson can have that in his house.
Well, I thought about putting a little sign underneath it, of what the history. Then I was making up history. We fought off the Indians and all this other kind of stuff.
We lost 4 to the plague.
Yeah, we were fired from the back.
Taylor Sheridan actually called my family to get backstory. They needed inspiration. Yellowstone. What?
Did he really?
He went to LSU for a year. Sure did in the 80s and left and went to wherever Texas A&M or someplace. Yeah.
Shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, let me put it this way. A friend of mine who says he went to college with him at LSU says that. I don't see that written up too much, but I think he went to LSU for a year. He's done well.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Huh.
So when we close out with a guest, if you've seen before, we like to ask a question, which is, as the Doodads podcast, we always just right off the cuff, what would you do? What would you suggest if, as a parent, as a dad, especially as a dad, as a mentor of any sort, as a man, what would you suggest people do to better enhance, their children's lives, themselves?
Great question. Well, always work on yourself. Understand you'll never know everything. Keep some sort of higher power in your life and your kids' lives, whatever you decide to call that. I talk to my kids a lot, about that kind of stuff. We still pray at a lot of dinners, not all of them, all that kind of things, and just continuing to be a man of principles. It's the most nerve-wracking thing in the world. Are they going to turn out okay? I want the letter from God that says, Flynn, you're going to live longer than your kids, and I don't know if that's going to happen because God's never sent me that letter. But I'm going to do everything I can while I'm here, just try to live one day at a time, do the next right thing, and show them how they're supposed to behave around women, at work, when things don't go your way, as a lesson, and there's some sort of journey you're on, and God's got a better plan for you than I do, And
you love your kids.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're great. It's fun, man, and it's fun. They've gotten to be buddies because when they were little, they were 14 months apart and fought all the time, and you're worried to death. And now it's like
you got a lifelong
they're
best friend.
hanging, they're hanging with each other and doing stuff. It's really funny to see.
That is really cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
For coming on
This was
here
fun.
and doing this.
Yeah.
I know. I wish we had a whole
I hope it goes viral.
another hour or two.
I'm just glad you came on.
Yeah,
I appreciate
same.
being asked.
Same.
Thought enough to do it. I didn't even chew my cigar. This is a habit I got.
Now that
from
I
my
know,
dad,
now that I know that you got a wagon table, I'm a little disappointed you didn't chew on your cigar. It's okay.
Well, we were talking so much, it was good.
Anyway,
Doodads, check us out on the YouTube channel, Official Doodads Podcast. Go to TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the things. Hit the dinger, the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. Flynn, brother, thank you.
really appreciate it. Thanks.
Love you, bro.
Love you too, man. Have a great week.
I'm going to try.
You too, Ken.
Bye.
He didn't say a word. He's good.
He's pretty quiet.